So we got Don here today. He's the master. He's the guy that's going to be able to answer all of our questions, and we're just gonna talk about the voicing. Okay, so let's start off with where the vintage voicing came from, Don.
The vintage voicing came from doing replicas of several mandolins. I did a replica of David Grisman's Crusher. I did a replica of John Reichman's 24, and I did a replica of Bobby Osborne's 25 Fern. And the replicas were limited edition, signed by the artist, and decorated in a certain way. So those are done. But I'm continuing to build vintage mandolins, vintage voice mandolins, and I'm using the information from those to continue that same voice.
The first vintage voice let's talk about replicas. So the first replica that you did that would be David Grisman's mandolin, correct?
The first replica was David Grisman's. Now the vintage, there was a few years of some vintage getting started.
Right.
But the first replica was David Grisman's.
Okay, and so that was
the vintage 22. It was a 22 signed Loar.
Talk a little bit about the flexibility of that, because I know that one of the things that you accomplished when you set out to master this voicing, and it's incredible, but one of the things that you wanted to accomplish was to be able to find some kind of a constant. And I know you've always used flexibility. So let's talk about the flexibility of the top and the back.
That's right. The way I have voiced mandolins, and even before I got into the vintage and replicas, was to measure the flexibility of the top and the back. So I have a device that would push down where the bridge feet sit, and indicators that measure how much it moves under a specific pressure. When I measured David Grisman's Loar, I took the strings in the bridge off, put it in this device, and put pressure down on the feet of the bridge, came up with the number that has moved, how much the top moved, how much the back moved. So after that, I'm using Vintage 22 to use that same voice, and it was a fairly flexible top and a fairly stiff back.
Okay.
And that was my first one, so I didn't have any reference point other than I knew the thousandths of an inch the top moved down and the back.
And so using that voice, you were able to do the replicas. One of the things that you found was that crystal clear, I don't know what you want to call it, about a Loar's voice, but we were talking earlier about when you go to an award show or you hear a Loar on stage, it just has a way to cut through everything like nothing else. That's what this accomplishes, is being able to build a mandolin that will have those characteristics of that Loar, correct?
Correct. The Loar can cut through, and it's got a crystalline nature to the tone, particularly in the highs, and it doesn't sound woody or muddy, which that tone is more like a guitar.
Right.
So you don't know if you're hearing the mandolin or the guitar played on the high frets. That's an exaggeration. But
no, exactly.
With the Loar, you know when it's the mandolin playing, even on the low notes of the registry. So the characteristics are really common throughout the Loars. They're varnished. The Ferns later on were lacquered, and that changed the tone.
Sure.
And then, it morphed later on as different personnel were in there building. So the Loars have a unique cutting ability and tone. And so when I did the different replicas, I found the emphasis, they all had that common sound, but they had the strengths in different areas.
Yeah. So we talked about the Vintage 22. So the next replica that you did was which one?
The Reichman replica, the Vintage 24.
Okay, so that's the Vintage 24 voice.
Right. So that was a February 18th, 24 Loar. I think just about the largest batch that there was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had a stiffer top than David Grisman's 22. And it had a more flexible back. And what I found in terms of listening to it was that David Grisman's Loar was strong, or the replicas I made from it were strong on the treble and the bass. It still
Right.
had all the characteristics of the Loar, whereas the John Reichman Loar was really strong in the middle,
Yeah, the mid-range.
mid-range strength.
Yeah.
It still had good highs and good lows,
Yeah, exactly.
but you could just tell that mid-range was rich and strong.
Yeah. And so from that, after the Reichman, the next one would have been the Osborne.
The Osborne.
Okay.
Yeah. And Bobby Osborne's Fern, the Ferns were not dated. The Loars were all dated and signed,
Okay.
but the Ferns were not. So there's always debate about what year they were. But Bobby's was varnished, and it had the characteristics of the Loar. So it was a very early Fern. It was a very early Fern. So its flexibility, it was the most flexible top of the three replicas I did, and it was the most flexible back. So it was a very flexible instrument. And I found that its strength was really on the high end. It really had, you could go up to the 12th or 15th fret and you wouldn't lose any volume.
Yeah, it was very bright and very strong all the way up. Yeah, that's interesting. So it was the most flexible top, most flexible back.
Yes.
And that's the vintage 25. And then along came the July 9.
Yes.
So what's the flexibility of that mandolin and how does it fit in?
So July 9, it wasn't modeled after a specific Loar. It was called the July 9 because of the person that I was trying to build a mandolin for was Monroe all the way.
Yeah, wanted Monroe all the way.
All the way. So I wanted to try and make something that was like what he was asking for. And so I measured a bunch of instruments and I realized that I needed a more flexible top in that one and a stiffer back. So the July 9 has the stiffest back of any of the voices that I do. And it has a top that's as flexible as the Osborne. It's up there in flexibility, strong, more flexible than the Reichman or the Vintage 22 or the Vintage 24.
Okay, so that's the July 9 voicing, and you know those are the four voices that we see the most.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that are out there the most. I know you also you have a Cox voicing,
Right.
and you also did some mandolins with Herschel Sizemore. All of the mandolins have the wonderful characteristics of the Loar, and I think that's the thing that the mandolin world is so enamored by, and they're just so amazed at how that you've been able to accomplish that and then reproduce it at a consistent rate. I mean, it's just all the mandolins are incredible, and it's an honor for us to represent your product. It's an honor for us to have you here in the shop, and everything you do, Don, it's just amazing.
Well, Morgan has been great for me, and you have been great for me. I appreciate our association. Wouldn't change it for the world. It's been great, and we'll continue.
Hopefully we get a lot more mandolins. That's what we're after. Yeah. We're sure excited to have you here and thankful that you took the time to come out. And we really respect you and the mandolins that you build.
So good.
All right.
Thank you so much.
So we appreciate the visit, and we're gonna have a good weekend.